Welcome to Redstart Cabin. Things have been happening. We have our pillars in finally, the metal pillars to hold up the portico to get rid of all the junky wood that was up here before on a temporary basis. It's a cold day. It's going to rain, it might snow a little bit, but it's beautiful. So today is electrical rough up. Over the last week, the plumbers have been here a couple of times. They're coming again today to finish up their process, but electrical and plumbing are all coming up out of the ground and going everywhere inside the house. The goal is by the end of the week to have all the piercings done. That includes the ventilation for the fans in the bathroom and in the kitchen, and all the electrical lights. Everything on the outside should be done so that at least that part's ready for stucco. This storm has been such a big deal. It's been cold, really cold, dark and rainy for days. So the workers are bringing their lights in. And here you can see how they're installing junction boxes inside the EF block. I'm finding out a lot during this process. The electrician has been here for a day and a half. The plumber was here all day yesterday. And we made a ton of progress, but I also ran into about 5,000 more questions than I thought I was going to. And I thought I was prepared. The main driver for late stage cost overruns is change orders. Not knowing what you wanted, the guys just did what they thought was reasonable, and then you come and look at it and say, that's not right, you have to redo it. And they charge you for that. And so I've been way ahead of the curve. I've been working on my lighting plan, for instance, for months. It was 3 weeks ago I gave a very detailed written document to the electrician. Said, here's all the details, here's where all the fixtures go, here's where all the switches go, here's where all the outlets go, what height they are off the floor, the sconces, how far away from the door and how tall. All these questions are answered. And I found to answer some of those questions, I needed to know a lot more details about the lights themselves. So I went shopping for lights. I figured I've got to buy them. So I went and I bought all the lights. I found some fantastic end of model year deals, in some cases up to 90% off. You can do that when you're just building one house. And I got great lights. And so they go all over the place, and I now have them, and I know. And that was a good thing because a lot of those lights are really simple. It's a standard sconce. It just plugs in the wall in an ordinary outlet. Some of them are a little different. LEDs require a driver, which is a device that converts from AC power to DC power for the LEDs. On some lights, that's integrated. It's inside the light unit. And in others, it's remote. So it could go in the junction box, but some of the exterior lights, the junction boxes are relatively small, being weatherproof, and the drivers are relatively large. So I had to get special special junction boxes for the exterior lights. Got all that handled. The switches for the rollers on the windows, those are European, so they require different standards. We needed to get European junction boxes so that the switches would screw in correctly. I got all those. That's how I was ahead of the curve. But then you get here and they start asking questions like, well, do you want all the outlets in the kitchen at 48 inches to the top of the, I said, well, I don't know. I mean, I have countertop and then somewhere between the countertop and the upper cabinet, and they said, well, 48 inches is standard. I said, fine. Okay, I hadn't thought about that. It's just above the counter, below the cabinet. Then for the kitchen sink, they said, well, okay, so code requires you to have an outlet on both sides of the kitchen sink within 3 feet of the center of the sink. And I thought, they do? That's not what I had planned. And so they said, do you want them symmetrical? And how far away from the window? And that's a good question because how are the cabinets going to line up on the window? And I want the cabinets to line up with the outlets and the switch for the light. And it's a good thing I was ahead of the curve on the cabinets. I actually know where all the cabinets are going to go. So I was able to figure all that out and make those decisions. And that's just electrical. And the plumbing was kind of the same way. I didn't realize that at the rough-in, he needed to know which fixtures we were going to use. I'll explain why. Here we are in the primary shower. And this little guy right here was the source of some urgent decisions. A couple of weeks ago, he asked me what shower controls we were going to have. And I thought that shower heads and shower controls are something that we did later. But it turns out that when you put in a shower unit like this one, it goes behind the tiles or whatever surface you have in your shower. And this is where all the magic happens, and it's a different unit depending on the manufacturer and depending on what units are doing the controlling. So the things that attach to this are called the trim units. This is called the rough-in valve. So we had to make quick decisions. Are we going to go with Delta or Moen or what? I did know that I wanted a thermostatic valve in the shower, and the thermostatic valves are really cool. They actually set the temperature of the outcome. Instead of just doing a 50-50 mix or a 70-30, in the wintertime the cold is a lot colder. So this unit, being thermostatic, increases the amount of hot water coming into it so that the stuff that goes out is always the same temperature, irregardless of the incoming temperatures. And that's kind of a cool feature. You can set your shower temperature like you like it, and every time you turn your shower on, no matter what volume you put it at, it's going to be that temperature. Kind of a cool thing. I know this looks like traditional PEX tubing, but it's not. PEX tubing is cross-linked polyethylene. And they take polyethylene molecules and they cross-link them together to create a product that is strong enough to use for water supplies in houses. But it also has some chemical additives added to the polyethylene that sometimes leach into the water. Some people are concerned about it. Most people aren't, but some are. And to avoid that, I'm using a PERT technique. This PERT is a product that was developed by Dow Chemical. It's been in use in Europe since the 2010s, and it has a 100-year warranty. Instead of cross-linking the polyethylene, they instead use a mix of densities. There's high density and low density plastics all put together. So this is a very pure product. This is hyper pure PERT tubing from a company called Legend. And this product is very cool. It's as strong as PEX. In fact, it's a little stronger than PEX. But unlike PEX, it's pure. It doesn't have those additives for cross-linking. So there's no taste, no off-gassing, and no shedding of chemicals into our water supply. That matters to me. The other thing that matters to me is it's more green, more sustainable. This polyethylene can be melted and recycled over and over and over. And so it's a recyclable product. The cross-linked polyethylene, PEX, is not recyclable because it won't melt. And so this is a recyclable, more green product. It's still plastic, but it doesn't have the additives in it that I might be concerned about. This week has been great for working with people who know what they're doing. They've really enhanced the project, bringing their skills and expertise and knowledge to the Redstart Cabin project. Here's a good case in point. These fasteners right here, there's a lot of them, and they're everywhere, and he uses them copiously. And I asked Carden from Rimview Plumbing in Payson, why are you doing it that way? And he said, well, by fastening the types very, very securely, you prevent hammering. Hammering is that thunking sound you hear when you turn the water off quickly in some houses. If everything is firmly mounted everywhere, then there's no places for the pipes to move, and there's no percussive elements to create the sound. So it makes for quieter operation over time. I never would have thought of that. I love that these guys are doing that across the board. It's really helped out. The same thing's true in electrical. They're thinking through things and making sure that I've got electrical connections for later that are going to work. A good case in point I'll show you in a second. Pro Solutions out of Phoenix is doing the electrical. They've done a great job, great guys to work with. They came into the washer system, washer dryer, which is all set up here, and said, I don't believe what you're doing. And I said, why? And they challenged me. Because the washer required a 220 volt hookup. He said, washers don't need 220. Standard hookups are 110, you should double check. So I double checked, yeah, we do need 220. And yeah, that is unusual. A standard hookup would have a 110 hookup for the dryer and a 220 4-prong high amperage output for the dryer. Now the Bosch setup uses a very highly efficient dryer. It's a heat pump dryer. So it doesn't need the high current draw of a conventional electric dryer. So when you buy the Bosch unit and you put it into an ordinary home, the pair, it comes with an adapter, a 4-prong adapter that plugs into the 220 of the 4-prong, and then it has 2 connections of the 3-prong lower amperage 220, and one of those goes to the washer, one goes to the dryer. So I showed that to the electrician, and he said, okay, so we could put in a 3-prong here and a 3-prong there, but I don't think you should do that. I said, why not? He said, well, because then you're married to this washer dryer. You want to put in a different washer dryer in the future, you won't have the hookup for it. Instead, put a conventional 110 here, a conventional 220 there with the 4 prongs, and use the Bosch adapter to retrofit it in. That way you have a standard setup and you have total freedom in what you do in the future. And I went, okay, that sounds like really good thinking. Let's do it that way. I also then worked with the plumber on what we're going to do underneath the washer dryer. Now that I've got this 110 outlet for the washer that we're not going to use, I can use it to power a robot mop vacuum garage that sits underneath the washer dryer. And if you followed robot vacuums, 5, 10, 15 years ago, the first ones, they were just bumble around, stumble and bump, and they got everything clean, worked pretty well. Then they got better and they did LiDAR mapping, so they know which room is the kitchen and they know where everything is, and they're very, very thorough. That was an improvement. Then they added mopping. Now, mopping's great. I don't have mopping at home on the unit I have. I have just a standard vacuum. But the mopping, the people I know have them say they really love it. But the way you deal with the mopping is the base station is this huge device and it has 2 large water reservoirs in it. One is for soapy water and the other is for dirty water. And every once in a while you have to take the soapy water and refill it, and you have to take the dirty water and dump it out. But the new ones here in 2025 are just coming out that handle plumbing. So we've got a unit that's going to be sitting right here underneath the washer dryer, out of the way, and it requires 2 hookups, one to the drain and one for a water supply. This is a 1/4 inch hookup inside here for the water supply and a 3/8 inch hookup here for the drain. So when it comes back to the station, it will wash its own mops, clean them, and be ready to go for next time. There's been a couple of times in this project where I have pushed against the contractors, pushed against the architect, worked with people to find a solution that was not typical. This is a good example of one. When it got installed today, the door guys that did it said this is really going to work very, very well. The challenge, the design challenge, was that I needed a toilet room here and a shower over here. And if I walled this out conventionally, there's a very, very narrow space here. And I'm trying to maintain 36-inch widths everywhere in the house for possible wheelchair use in the future, whatever. But I want nice, wide openings. I don't want tight spaces. And if I had walled this off in a conventional manner, we would have had a tight space. We could have a small doorway and a tight room and a wall all the way out to here, which would break my rules for 36 inches everywhere. So we tried a bunch of ideas in our heads, and the architect and I finally ended up with a dual pocket door design. And this dual pocket door has a very unusual aspect. It is at 90 degrees. So now, when you're in there and you've closed the doors, we're restricted. We don't have our 36. But if you shove these back, you end up with about 42 inches. So I've got a 42-inch clearing and a very unusual L-shaped pocket door that works. He'd never built one before. He said, I've never done this. And he put soft stops on them, so they just line up automatically. Not a lot of banging around. I'm super excited about this. Not only was it difficult to conceive of and to finally get people to say, yeah, maybe we could pull that off, but it was also very difficult to get it framed in correctly. When they got up here today, the dimensions weren't exactly right. It's another example of items that didn't work when they arrived. So being high quality guys from Stan the Doorman, they just resized everything. They cut things to fit, they cut the doors down, and they put in new framing up on top. So when it finally gets framed, it'll be flush when they put the trim around it. And it'll all get drywalled in. And this is going to work out just perfectly. I couldn't be happier. And there's an update on the windows. Poland is weighed in, there have been meetings, and they've decided they're going to send somebody over from Europe with the component parts to the job site in order to fix the windows and get them all up and running like they should be. I don't have a timeline on that yet. Hopefully next week we'll get a timeline and we'll be back in process getting the windows finally installed.